Alright, how's it going, everyone? Welcome back to episode 2 of Theo's Garage. For today's episode, we are going to be replacing my upper and lower ball joint. The reason being that I want to replace them was I was inspecting it, and this is my upper ball joint. As you can see, this little gasket where it holds all the grease inside, it's actually torn. So literally it is stiff to even move it. As well as my lower ball joint, as you see, it's pretty torn, and I just want to replace that. This moves a lot easier, but still, this is not good. And while we're doing this, I'm just going to swap out my shocks. The reason being, I'm not sure how old these actually are. They do still retract, but I want to replace them with new ones just so that I know that my shocks are good and brand new and they're not going to go out anytime soon. So without further ado, let's get to the parts that we're going to need for this job. So these are the tools that you're going to need for this removal and installation. The drill is optional. I only use the drill because I have a lot of dirt, grime, grease buildup where the ball joints are housed. An impact drill is always good to have, makes things a lot easier, makes taking nuts off hassle-free. You do want a repair manual, because if you've never done this before, it's always good because it has a step-by-step. A magnetic tray, if you ever remove any nuts or bolts and don't want to misplace them like I do all the time, it's always good to have. Torque wrench, it's a 1/2-inch torque wrench that's in foot-pounds because everything that we're going to be torquing today will be in foot-pounds. I have some PB blaster, got some needle nose pliers, got some snap ring pliers, got a Phillips head screwdriver. I have a 3-pound sledgehammer. It just makes it smacking the ball joints out of place easier, which I get it, not recommended. I should use a ball joint separator, but this seemed to work for me on the other side with no issues. So if you want to use a ball joint separator, I highly recommend one, but I was okay with hitting it with a sledgehammer. As well as paper towels. Gloves are always nice to have, and a bunch of sockets and ratchets. So removing the nuts, I'm going to use my impact drill as well as a 13/16 socket. In millimeters, it's going to be a 21 millimeter, and let's remove it. So that's all 6. Let's get these out of the way. Let's remove this wheel. Alright. And so for this wheel, I'm just going to slide it under. Alright, to give you a better view of this, these are all 10 millimeter. All you got to do is hold it, screw away. It's that simple. And then you just put it inside your magnetic tray so you never lose it. So another thing I forgot to mention was that when you're removing this, just make sure that it's in the free area. When you're actually looking through the Haynes manual, it'll tell you to make sure that it's in this area. It just makes it, I get it, free spinning is fine, but using an impact wrench would just make things a whole lot easier. It made things easier for me on the other side.
I'm not getting away too much. There we go, and 6.
Now when removing this, there's a little gasket back here. And so with this gasket, you kind of just want to pry it a little bit, not too hard, and I'll show you why. So when you pull this out, you can see all the mechanisms in there, and you don't want those to come apart. So keep it like this, and we'll put it off in our magnetic tray. So for these bolts, they're going to be a 14 millimeter. For in here, there's actually a C-clip It'll be hard to tell, but once I get this removed, I will show it to you guys. So I got the little C-clip off, as you can see, and that's just gonna go right up here. Just be careful, because once you start pulling this out, there's actually some washers on here. You just want to make sure that you don't lose those washers. So let me just get a screwdriver back here real quick. There we go. So you see, it just gives that one little clunk with your flathead screwdriver. If you have a pry bar, that's great. I don't know if you can see this, but you see these washers right here. Make sure that you just hold them in place and get that C-clip and just put it right on top. It's got grease on it, so it's going to stay together. So with this, you want to remove these two Phillips, and so that's what I'm going to do. But before I actually do that, before I move any further, I actually want to take off this caliper. And you got two bolts in the back, as well as that Phillips screw back here that you're going to take off eventually. There's going to be 3 more Phillips behind this, or on this dust cover behind the rotor itself. So let me take this off real quick. Like I was saying earlier, you got these 2 screws right here, but if you want this to come out as one big thing with the rotor attached, you don't need to remove these bolts right now. I did on the other side, so I'm going to do the same thing, and then after that I'll get in here, remove these Phillips, and this is where I actually had to hit it with a sledgehammer, because the other side I almost stripped it completely. For these trucks, it's very interesting, so if you have a 4x4 like mine, it was a little interesting to take these out. So if you want to take these off, which I'm going to, they're a 14mm or a 9/16. And what you're going to do is you're going to want to use 2. The reason being is because on the back of here, there's actually a nut that you're going to have to hold while you're taking this off. And whichever way the cab is, that's going to be your opening to actually put a ratchet back there and hold it down. Alright, so now you got all 6 bolts. You're going to put them to the side, and now we can start working on this area. Let's see if I can get that for you. Let's zoom in a little bit. There you go. So like I said, I did hit this with a sledgehammer just so that it could puncture it a little bit, make it easier so that I don't strip it. How true that is, I'm not sure, but it worked for me. And there you go. And that is one. It's hard to see. But yeah, like I said in my other video, I'm not a mechanic. I'm not a professional. Just a dude that wants to learn about cars. So I bought this project truck. There we go. Scientifically proven, words are hard for me, that grunting while you're doing something makes you a lot stronger. Not really true, but it makes me want to think that. So like I was talking about this little hook tool, this is a washer. So no, this is not its axle nut. You'll see the axle nut once we get this off. So there goes that. So the thing that I found at O'Reilly's It's called a lock nut socket, and this is the size. It's not actually the complete size on this, but it's got 4 prongs, which all I really used was one, and I eventually just started spinning it, as I'm going to show you now. So you want to get it in one of the ports that doesn't really have a thread in it. You just want to press up against it and kind of try and spin it free. And I don't know if you can tell, but now it's starting to spin. So it's pretty simple. It's not really torqued on there like that difficult, so if it was, I definitely would have had a lot more issues. So hopefully, if you're ever trying to replace your ball joints or even your rotors, you can look back at this video and remember it's a lock nut socket that's 2 3/8. Let's try to remove this. And if you actually wanted to change this locking nut or axle nut, whatever you want to call it, I was looking on Rock Auto, and they actually have one for these trucks that actually has 6 indentations all around, but I'll let you do the research on that. As you can see, since we got all of that off, this is actually going to come out. So see this, and just want to be real gentle. That's not coming out. Now I'm real curious. So this is just a little tough to get off, but as you can see, the seal was kind of caught. I'm gonna lay this to the side, but it did come off. Let's check this out. This bearing race and the seal itself aren't coming off. I used a flathead. I put it up against the inside of this bearing, and all I did was smack it around a little bit on each end, and eventually came free. And now, see if it'll come off. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. There we go. Now that worried me for a sec. Now, like I was explaining earlier, you have 3 screws on here. You have one here, and then one right in this area. So now, just gonna get it in there. Give it a few good pounds and start twisting. Remember, grunting is key. Alright, maybe not. Goodness. My electric drill. So, my goodness. And if you're wondering, no, it did not just come off by me just going in the reverse. Unfortunately, this could probably break my drill, but I did spin it. And I spun it slowly, so I'm going to show you that. There we go. And now, off it comes. Just put that down there. Go for the third one now. Awesome. And there we go. And put all of this together, move it to the side, and now we're where we need to be. So you have the upper ball joint just right here, as you can see. Look at all that grime, all of this. So I'm gonna get my wire wheel. I'm gonna start doing all of this, as well as the lower ball joint, which, I mean, is really hard to see, but you can see that there's a cotter pin right there and then the axle nut. But all of this has to be changed out. What we're gonna do is remove this castle nut down here, or the cotter pin first, and then the castle nut. And then we could take this castle nut off. So let's get to it. First, you want to use your needle nose pliers. So that, and straighten it out as much as you can. Push it back, grab on this other side, and slowly rock it back and forth till it comes out. And now I'm going to take off this castle nut. So I'm using a 25mm socket. So let's get to it. And sometimes these are a little tough to get off, so you just might need some extra oomph to get it off. So yeah, see, so it's not going to want to give. So what I'm going to do is, once again, trust my sledgehammer. I'll make sure it's on the loose before you do this. They say sometimes you can smack it tight really quick and it kind of breaks the torque off of it as well. Just put it tight, smack it, and then put it to the loose. And there you go. Oop. That's where it's at. So what we're going to want to do now is flip this upside down like this. So we're going to thread it back in and do that and make sure it's seated at the bottom. Okay, then we're good to go. And I'm going to leave that there for now until we actually remove the whole knuckle arm, and then I will smack this off and then the ball joint will come out. So now we can do the same for the top. So there we go. I didn't show it, but it took a little bit. Finally got the castle nut or the cotter pin off, but it did snap, so I had to pull out the rest of it. And now we just got to remove the nut. And for here, we're going to be using a 7/8. Once again, it's going to be tight, so I already know I'm going to be using my sledgehammer. So there we go. So for this whole thing, I'm going to be removing this entire knuckle arm. I'm also going to be removing the upper control arm, and then eventually I'll just be replacing the shock. So there's 2 bolts all the way back here. Alright, well, hopefully this works. Hopefully it doesn't move out of place, but we'll find out. Alright guys, well, I realized what I did wrong. What I forgot was that there's actually a C-clamp under all this grease. It's really hard to see, but once I get it off, I'll show you. There we go. Let's smack this thing out of here. There we go. Now I'm just going to clean it up. As for the other ball joint, I'm just going to set it down. I'm just going to hit it with a hammer. So. There you go. There it goes. Now it's time to press in the new ball joint. There you have it. Now you're going to want to do is, like on the other ball joint that we removed, you want to make sure that you put your C-clip in there. Alright guys, well, I didn't show it, but the snap ring is in there. You can see it. Reason being is that I needed help, so when you're doing this, be careful, because on the other ball joint, if you don't have a helper, these are really tight snap rings, and I actually tore the boot, so just be careful with that. Get some help, because as you start pulling these snap rings out, it's gonna kind of like curve the snap ring, so it's easier if someone just helps you out. So now let's install this. So as you guys can see, it is cleaned up. I did spray it, and now we're going to install the upper control arm. So remember, when you take this off, if you do this job, just know that these are here, and you're just going to place them in the back, and it's going to go like this, and then you got two other ones. And you're going to want to make sure that you get them all in there. So just be careful. You want to make sure that that's all back there, and then you just put in the bolts. So we got the bolts in. I haven't tightened them down yet, but now it's in there. It's snug. Almost snug. So what you're going to do, once again, remember, there's a bolt on the other side, and you're going to be tightening this nut. So just make sure that you have a combination wrench, something, a socket. If you could fit it back there, just holding it down. Wow. Get my impact wrench. Use my 17mm. And we tighten these down. Now what we're going to do is bring out our Haynes manual. You're going to flip to chapter 10 if you got one. And what we're going to be looking at is right in this section. Torque specifications. So what we're going to be doing is the upper arm shaft to frame, and as you see, it's going to be 72 to 87 foot-pounds. So it's going to be foot-pounds unless otherwise indicated. So I get my torque wrench, and I'm going to torque these down. Definitely a tight spot to work in, but they are torqued down. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting the knuckle arm and the lower ball joint in. For the lower ball joint on these, it doesn't necessarily have to get pressed in, or actually it doesn't have to get pressed in. You're just going to tighten it down, and the way you're going to want to put it back is literally like this. If you were unsure, just make sure that the lower neck or bend is going to be facing towards the ground. So Let's get the other ball joint and let's put this in. Hey guys, so I want to apologize. My camera did die during the last steps of this installment. So all I really did at the very end where my camera died was I reinstalled this piece right here, as well as this front cover. In here, you just want to make sure that the teeth at the very top match. I did put RTV red and tacky sealant around the bolts just so that it seals as a gasket for both of these areas. Other than that, there was no torque spec, so I made sure they were tight. Other than that, pretty much put the wheel back on, and then that was it. And that is the end of the video. Like, comment, subscribe. The next video I intend to do is actually replace my tie rods. They're on order right now, and they should be coming at the end of the week, so another video should be coming soon. In the comments, drop a recommendation of what you would like to see if you have one of these trucks, and I will see if I can find the parts or how to do the install and removal of whatever you're asking. I do have Raptor liner sitting in my shed right now that I'd like to do, so that's another video that I will be doing soon. Other than that, thanks for watching.